Okay, I'd like to call this special council meeting to order for Tuesday, September 5th, and a motion to, or do we have any late items, Ms. McWilliams, for this agenda?
Thank you, Your Worship. We do not.
Okay. So there's item 3.1, which is an approval of the agenda. So a motion to approve the agenda. Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Staples, are you able to hear us? Councillor Staples, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. We move to reports of staff. We have item 4.1, which is the amalgamation referendum communications plan process, and there is a motion on the agenda. And for discussion, we should have a mover and seconder. Moved and seconded. Okay, thank you. So discussion on the motion. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with the plan. I just don't agree with the date. I really feel that we should honor the Citizens' Assembly and stick to the date that they've recommended, which is in conjunction with the elections next year. I don't see any reason why we would want to spend more money because we have to hold an election already. So, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. I didn't realize that we had a big pot of cash laying around to spend on a second unnecessary election.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Jackson.
I have given this a lot of consideration, and I'm thinking about the last election and how bitter and nasty it was, and the lies that were being told at doorsteps. And I always felt that I was just behind the people that were telling those stories to our citizens. And I have completely reconsidered. I had thought at one point that what you said was correct, but I don't want the amalgamation to be the issue that brings bitterness and divisiveness during the next election. So I am in favor of having the referendum in earlier in the year. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Horgan.
I fully agree. I think that having an early question, a single question, won't muddy the waters, because if we just asked, or the citizens just asked if they would like to amalgamate or not, I think that would be a nice, easy question. Won't get confused with anything else and won't give any bias. As for Councillor Duncan's concern about the cost, I think that we've spent, as the two municipalities, I think we spent $135,000, or we earmarked that. I think another 10 to make sure that the process is done properly. I don't think that would be out of line, although I do agree I don't like wasting the citizens' money, but I think it's well spent. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? I would like to add, I do appreciate the working group's effort to answer some of the questions that I posed with respect to the process, and I do believe this is a reasonable framework. I expect that the work will be cut out for staff and the consultants when they are ultimately hired. I think it is a very tight timeline, and there doesn't appear to be a great deal of room for extra time if it's necessary. So I think there will be, and I will look forward to the group once this, if this resolution passes for the framework of the process goes forward, that the questions and the recommendations in the Citizens' Assembly report with respect to putting the proposal forward, to establishing some of the questions with respect to what the threshold of the vote would be, and things like that are established. It's a great deal of work for everybody who will be involved, and I think that both municipalities have a lot of capacity and ability to undertake something like this in a way that the Citizens' Assembly did their work in good, fine order and very thoroughly. So I'm confident with the outline we have here and the cost sharing and those things that that we'll be able to get it in place. So I think the question being answered sooner than later is, I do support that. So we'll have to get to work. It'll be a very intense process. I hope that neither council will hold up the good work that they're doing with respect to strategic objectives in the municipalities while we go through this. Staying focused on the things that are clearly identified to get done. My motto has always been pedal to metal to the end, and whether it's an election cycle or something like this, we do need to undertake the work that we've identified as being important for the citizens. So on that, if there's any further discussion on the motion, this is with respect to the communications plan process. Councillor Bell.
I've said all these things, but because I'm on the working group, I think I'll just reiterate for the public. Thank you. So I went into the discussion with the working group sort of with the idea that it would make more sense to do it during the election because it would make, financially it made more sense, probably easier on staff. I had my own sort of preconception, but also was open to hearing what would work best. And when we worked through the matrix, it became pretty obvious to everybody in the working group, it was unanimous that it made more sense to do it separate. And so the things that stand out for me now, for everyone, everybody prioritizes differently, and what's important to me is going to be different for what's important to someone else. So this is why it was important to me is there's going to be a communications plan, and when that goes out to the community, it should be the same for North Cowichan and the City of Duncan, and it's going to be factual. And so the councillors are going to agree on that. And so when it's during an election campaign, there's all sorts of information out there. And there's stuff being put out there so much that it's hard to weed through it. And the media is actually really choosy about what they put out there because they don't want to, give each person more publicity than the other. And so we don't really get a lot of the information. And we had people going door to door giving out their own interpretation. So this way, the campaign's going to be just on this issue. And so when people show up to the polls, it's going to be because they have a vested interest in this issue, not because there's a mayoral race, not because they have a friend that's running, because they're actually either looking into or not looking into the facts of this. So when there was a pool referendum in the South End, I was able to look later and find out where did Cow Bay sit? Where did South Cowichan, or where did Shawnigan sit? Where did Mill Bay? And I really felt like it was a reflection of how many people actually even cared about the issue. When it happens during an election, I honestly won't know. I won't know. Did they show up and just take a box like the HST referendum? Or did they actually come out because of this particular issue? So if the City of Duncan citizens are going to educate themselves on this issue, see the impact, and they're going to go out and vote, we're going to know if it matters to them or not. Because it's going to be true numbers, because you have to go out and vote. So because North Cowichan is cooperative in this and they're willing to help pay for it, this would be the time to do it, because then we're going to hire people to do it and not leave it on staff. So if we wait for an election, I think it's going to be actually more work on staff than if we do it separate. So for those reasons, that's why I'm in favor of it. I don't have a personal stake. It doesn't matter to me if it happens or not, but I think I will trust the results in this way more than others. So I'm in favor of a spring election, a referendum.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Staples, were you able to hear the dialogue?
Yeah, I can hear what's being said, and I don't have anything to add at this time. Everything's being covered.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Councillor Duncan opposed. Okay, we'll move on to item 4.2, which is the reconsideration of the amalgamation referendum next steps. The motion is being reconsidered pursuant to Section 131 of the Community Charter. And the motion is on the table as if it were on the table in the first order. So the motion here is for reconsideration, and it's on your agenda. I'll read it out. The Council sent a joint letter with the Municipality of North Cowichan to request the province direct both municipalities to hold a referendum on amalgamation in the City of Duncan and the municipality and North Cowichan in the spring of 2018, and the Council direct the amalgamation working group to continue to develop a process for providing sufficient unbiased information for a spring referendum question on amalgamation with the approval of that process by both councils. That is the question. Thank you. Seconder, thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Councillor Bruce.
Just a couple of comments, and then I'd also like to make a small amendment, if I may, Mr. Mayor, to that. But first of all, I'd like to thank the mayor for bringing this back. I think it was imperative for us to have an extra couple of weeks just to discuss things, and I applaud you for bringing it back to council today. The amendment that I would like to suggest is an actual suggested date just at the end of this, and it would read something like the spring of 2018 with a suggested date of Saturday, May 12th, 2018 at the end of that motion. And the reason, Mr. Mayor, that I suggest putting an actual date down is that if we send this back to Victoria, it'll end up on the minister's desk, and the minister will look at it sometime in the next month, and then he will or she will say, well, what date would you guys like? And then it'll come back to North Cowichan and the city again. It'll take us a month to come up with that date, which would likely be with the discussion of a few, probably around May 12th. And then we would send that date back to the minister again, and it'll take the minister another month to kind of look at the piece of paper and say that's fine, which is sort of a 3-month delay. So I'm not saying the date has to be written in stone, but I think we should send a date down to the minister, encouraging a date, and if they want to adjust it or they see something that needs to be adjusted because of the date, then we can get their feedback. But I think the minister down there will automatically grant our wish, and we'll just simply ask, what date do you want? So that's my motion. I'm hoping to have somebody second it. I'll second it.
Okay, that motion, and I just want to ensure that from a perspective of legal with respect to amending the motion, which is recalled as it was considered the first time, so just some guidance on that, Ms. McWilliam.
Just as long as the amendment passes unanimously?
Great, okay. It has to be unanimous?
That's my understanding for a motion for reconsideration.
Okay. And I just have a question for any staff who might answer it. I do want to make you aware that I have spoken to the minister, so the minister is aware that we are having this discussion. So she, in this case, has been reaching out to municipalities. She was very interested in the Citizens Assembly process, and we'll have further dialogue with her about that in maybe other circumstances when they arise, but she is aware of the question. So with respect to date, I know that there's a kind of a drop-dead date with respect to being able to do it without conflicting with the municipal election process. So anyone who can answer that would be...
Thank you, Your Worship. The staff had been in discussions briefly with the ministry and had an indication that the vote would have to happen no later than the end of May. Although there is certainly some potential merit in suggesting a date, it also potentially provides a distraction or a potential stumbling block in that for two purposes or two reasons. One is that the resolution would then differ from North Cowichan's resolution regarding the request for a spring referendum. And the other is if the decision from the ministers or the minister's staff, which is typically who I understand would be the ones that would advise on the best date, if it differed from the date that's suggested by council's resolution, they may feel the need to come back to council for clarification that it's okay to hold a different date and might delay it further from that perspective. So I believe it would be best to not add that for those two reasons I've stated.
Okay. Further discussion on the amendment. This is with respect to adding the specific date of May 12th. Councillor Horgan?
Yeah, I'm not sure either way personally, but would we not have to go back to North Cowichan to get their approval or agreements on the date before we could go forward? Would that not stall the whole process?
If we were, holding to the process that we use, these decisions have been agreed on by both councils, so that would likely be the result. Yes.
Yeah, because they do. I think they meet on Wednesday, so it wouldn't be a long wait. But I don't know whether we'd want to muddy the waters, or I can see Councillor Bruce's concern, but I can also see Mr. DeVerte's concerns too. So
if I may,
Do you have further information?
well, one approach that might appease both is to separate the two, to subsequently to reconsideration in the motion and whatever council decides on that, to direct staff that of council's indication that it would support a date of May 12th. And then in staff's discussions with the ministry as to selecting a date, we would already have the council's indication as to what they would support, but you know that it is a suggested date as opposed to something definitive.
And yes, but we would need to defeat this motion to amend specifically like this and separate a motion, have a separate motion following this motion. Councillor Bell?
To Talitha through the mayor, I'm just wondering, do you remember what the working group's tentative date was? And is that the process that would happen? If we went without a date, would it go to the minister and then it would take 3 months? Or if we threw a tentative time out there, would the minister just come back with a date? Like, I'm just wondering, which process do you think is likely to happen?
In my discussions with ministry staff, they've said that on a staff-to-staff level, we can work out the exact date. And as staff, as long as we knew that a date was agreeable with council, then we would have the authority to speak on behalf of council. The minister will be the one ordering that specific date, but the staff from the ministry will be the one making that suggestion to the minister based on the legislative calendar.
Yeah. From my perspective, I think with the motion that we have with the spring of 2018 and with the direction of and the obviously timelines with respect to informing the public, all those things that I believe what was mentioned in the report with the working group that may be the last possible time for it. And I'm quite confident that staff can work those things out with ministry to develop a date. And I don't think that we'll be waiting a great long time for an answer. Obviously, it would be difficult for us to spend a lot of resources at this point in time. If we expected to be waiting from the ministry for 3 months, I don't think that would be the case. As I say, the minister is aware as well as the ministry staff. And they don't have a lot of amalgamation questions going on in the province. It's been a while. Councillor Bell.
I'm just wondering, then could we follow through with the original motion and
Yes.
then make another, maybe direct staff to work with the minister around the May 12th, the date? Would that be?
We can make that, but we should defeat this motion with respect to amending this, and then we can go on from there. Councillor Jack, on the amendment.
The fact is that's already going to happen. That's already been happening. So I will be, even though I said it, I will be voting against this because it's already in motion. So we don't have to actually make an amendment because it's already, we don't have to make a different motion here because it's already happening. In my opinion.
The essence of the original motion is to send a letter to the minister requesting the date. And okay, so I'm going to call the question on the motion for the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? And the motion is defeated. So if there were a new motion that is acceptable, but we've had some discussion broadly around that. Councillor Staples, would you like to say something?
Pardon me?
We're getting some background noise from your system. If you could press mute if you're not going to speak. Thank you. All right.
We're back to the main motion.
We are back to the main motion. Yes. Okay. The amendment was defeated. So I'm going to call the question. Is there further discussion on the main motion? I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Councillor Duncan opposed. And the motion is carried. Okay, I will accept an additional motion if it's feel that that's an imperative, but
I think if staff comfortable with working with the ministry, as you mentioned, I think we're okay where you are.
okay. Agreed? Okay, thank you. So we move to adjournment. Motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Aye.
Thank you.